OMG. This has completely caught me off guard. Texas and Oklahoma are now officially going to be joining the SEC and leaving the Big 12. Now, we had heard the rumors over the past few days. I 100% thought they were just, for getting a better TV deal, something, where they were, Texas and Oklahoma were trying to get more money from the Big 12, whatever. They were never actually going to join the SEC. That would completely uproot the current, Power 5 conference structure we have in place. But apparently it's happening. Texas and Oklahoma will send a letter next week to the Big 12 informing the league that it won't renew its grant of rights upon expiration. Sources also told The Atlantic that the process is in play among remaining Big 12 members to assess their potential value to other conferences. This move could cause the Big 12 to dissolve, literally. And if that were the case, there's so many different factors you got to look at this. When it comes to the SEC, this truly does create a super conference. If they're adding the two biggest brands by far in the Big 12, obviously Oklahoma, you can argue the fourth or fifth best team in college football since the college football playoff era has been around in 2014. Texas, one of the biggest brands in college football. The amount of money that gets poured into the University of Texas is crazy. They have a recruiting hotbed in Texas. Obviously, people, they joke about Texas being back. They've been bad for a while recently, but they are still a major, major program when it comes to college football, and they have major talent. We already know the SEC is by far the most talented conference in college football. I say that as a Big 10 fan. I'm a Big 10 fan. I'm an Ohio State fan. We understand the SEC, is the best conference, the most talented conference. They get the best recruits. And now they're adding Oklahoma and Texas. This is going to, the first thing I think of is a team. You look at a team like Auburn. Auburn's a team rebuilding right now. They're completely screwed. I mean, you add Texas and Oklahoma to that conference. You've got Texas now. You've got Oklahoma. You've got LSU. You've got Alabama. You've got Florida. You've got Georgia. Oh my goodness. A&M. Who was recently added to the SEC, 5 or 6 years ago. This is just, if you're the Big Ten, you have to go out and get Notre Dame. You have to. Notre Dame needs to, because it's like, if Notre Dame goes to the ACC, which honestly, the ACC needs Notre Dame, because look at how bad, when Florida State is bad, the ACC is such a watered-down conference, it's disgusting. You look at Clemson's in-conference schedule this year, it's a joke. The ACC really does need Notre Dame, but now, with both Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, the Big Ten needs to do something. And it can't be adding Kansas. I saw there was a report that that Kansas reached out to the Big Ten. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these Big 12 schools realizing their conference is dissolving, reaching out to teams. We're going to have to see. If I was the Big Ten, the teams I would want from the Big 12, maybe a team like an Oklahoma State, maybe a team like TCU. They're always pretty solid. Iowa State, I really don't think has a lot of staying power once Matt Campbell leaves, and I think he's going to leave either after this year or after next year. But overall, there's a lot of things at play right now. Another thing we 100% know, if this is official, if Texas and Oklahoma do leave the Big 12 and join the SEC, making the SEC a 16-team conference, we now know the playoff is at least expanding to 12 teams. At least expanding to 12 teams if Oklahoma and Texas go to the SEC. That we know for sure. And then it comes down to, do we go from 5, Power 5 conferences to 4? The Big 12 just dissolves. Without Oklahoma, without Texas, I think the Big 12 would definitely at that point be on par, if not worse, than the American Conference. Without Texas and without Oklahoma, that really takes the sting out of their conference, no doubt. You're losing your two biggest teams by far, the two teams with, the best tradition. Texas, the amount of money they have. Oklahoma, they've been so phenomenal under Lincoln Riley recently. But yeah, this really caught me out. I did not expect this to happen. I mean, this is going to completely change. If this does officially happen, it looks like Texas and Oklahoma are currently locked into a deal with the Big 12 until 2025, but they're gonna try and buy it out. It's like $75 million or something like that. They're trying to buy it out to expedite this move to the SEC. I don't know exactly when this would happen, if this happens in 2022 or 2023. I haven't seen any numbers on that. But this is going to completely change college football, and I really don't think for the better, because it's like the SEC is going to be so much, this doesn't seem right to me. Like regionally, there were a lot of Big Ten fans that wanted Texas and Oklahoma to join the Big Ten, and I was just like, how does that work regionally? Texas in the Big Ten, like, what sense does that make? Now Notre Dame makes sense. We obviously already know Notre Dame, regionally is right within the Big Ten footprint. Notre Dame is a member of the Big Ten Conference for hockey. They're a member of the Big Ten Conference, I believe, for lacrosse as well. And then they're a member of the ACC for basketball. And then last year, because it was COVID, they went from independent to being part of the ACC, and now they're back to independent. But I'm guessing the ACC is definitely going to try and poach a few teams from the Big 12, along with Notre Dame. I'm guessing the big one they want is Notre Dame. They need Notre Dame. But the Big 10, I mean, you look at what we did. Our recent expansion of Rutgers and Nebraska, not looking good. Neither of those teams have added much in terms for, the basketball programs. Rutgers basketball, Nebraska basketball, neither of them are very good. If we were to add Kansas to the Big Ten, they have one of the worst football programs in, a Power 5 program. But obviously we know they've got a hell of a basketball program, so that would be a plus. But overall, I don't think this is not good for... This is not good for college football. I'm just gonna we're creating these super conferences, and then it's like if it's a 16-team conference with all of those teams, LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Georgia, A&M. I mean, and then you look at teams in the SEC currently rebuilding, like Tennessee. Tennessee is screwed. Oh my God. If this comes and you have to face either Texas or Oklahoma now, they join your division. Auburn's screwed. Auburn's just started to go through a rebuild. They're screwed. Oh my goodness. This is really, there's so many unknowns now with college football. It's not even funny. I don't know when this is going to happen, but I reacted to this news when it first broke, and they were like, well, Texas, Oklahoma looking at joining the SEC. That was the wording of it, and I was like, yeah, they're just posturing. They're doing it to get a better TV revenue deal from the Big 12 or something like that. And then this morning, it's like, it's happening, and I'm like, what? My goodness, folks, what is going on? Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. Creates major issues for every other Power 5 conference. I don't know what happens to the Pac-12. They really need USC to become a power. And it's not going to happen under Clay Helton. It's not happening under Clay Helton. You need to fire Clay Helton, USC. You need to fire him. What about UCLA? They're doing anything? David Shaw at Stanford. They're down. You've got Oregon trying to come back. They were great under Chip Kelly. They're trying to make a comeback under Cristobal. We'll see with them. But it's just like now there's one major super conference. The ACC is going to try and snatch Notre Dame, and that's going to put the Big Ten in not a good position. We need Michigan to be good again. We need Nebraska to be good. The last time they were really good was like the 90s, but I don't know, guys. To me, this is not good for college football. It just creates one super conference. All the power goes into that conference. It makes judging the best teams in college football a little bit harder, I think, because the schedules some of these SEC teams have are going to be crazy hard. That's why the other conferences all need to get better. If the Big 12 does dissolve, which I'm guessing it will, I mean, you lose your two by far most marketable programs. It's not even close. I mean, who becomes the top dog in the Big 12? I would guess maybe Oklahoma State. I mean, I don't know. Maybe TCU. It's one of those things, and then, we'll have to see what happens if any of those Big 12 teams decide to... We've already seen Kansas reach out to the Big 10. There's been reports on that, so we'll see what happens with that. But, if I was the Big 10, you maybe look at a team like a TCU. They're a solid football program. An Oklahoma State, maybe. Teams like that. I wouldn't be interested. Baylor, I guess their basketball program is phenomenal, but... Guys, a lot of unknowns right now. We'll have to see what happens. It's a developing story. We'll see what happens, guys. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.